Welcome to Cord Cutting This Week, number 69, the show where I give you a quick look at some of the biggest stories happening in the world of cord cutting from the past week. Now, this is my opinion on the stories. If you want to learn more about them, I'll put a link to each one in the show notes down below so you can read about them for yourself, come up with your own opinions. Let me know what you think of these stories, what you think I got wrong. I'll love to hear from you. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up. It really helps us by letting YouTube know you enjoy this content. And hopefully we can help you break free from the high-cost cable TV, but still watch the shows you enjoy. If you've been around a while, ring that notification bell. It really does help us. First, hey, quick clarification. Somebody who claims to have a, quote, vested interest in Omniverse reached out to let us know that HBO is not necessarily a part of their Omniverse Ace versus Ace lawsuit. Now, Ace is a group of different media companies, including HBO, Disney, and others, that all help them protect their intellectual property, in short. Now, not all ACE members are necessarily a part of the Omniverse lawsuit, is what this person wanted us to make very clear, and we always work very hard to be as accurate as possible with the information we have. So we just want to let you know about that. So what is all this? Omniverse and ACE have a lawsuit going on. Ace has sued Omniverse, which is a company that offers basically these packet live TV streaming services to a variety of different resellers out there, including the HDHomeRun Premium Tv service that we'll talk about a little bit later in this video. And Ace has said that no, you do not have the right to offer this content. Omniverse has said, yes, we have a contract, a 100-year contract that gives us the right to do this. Kind of one of those things we're going to have to let the courts decide this, because both sides are digging in their feet saying we are right, the other side's wrong. And with many of these things, it can often come down to what a judge and a bunch of lawyers can hash out here. So I just wanted to be very clear. We work very hard to cover the fast-moving world of cord cutting as accurately as we can with the information we have. So in full transparency, I just wanted to give that little update in the Omniverse case, because it's going to come up a little bit later in this video, and be very clear that just because somebody's a member of ACE, it does not necessarily mean that they're necessarily a part of every lawsuit that ACE brings. All right, let's dive into the story from the past week. Right now, there's a great deal happening where Starz is offering 6 months of their new streaming service for just $35. This is a really good deal, and as I always say, rotate your streaming services. Maybe this is time to drop one and pick this one up for a few months, but I think you have to get this through either Groupon or Living Social. I'll put a link to it down in the show notes. I think if you go to the Starz website, last I checked, it will still charge you full price. So if you want to get 6 months of Starz for 35 bucks, check that link out down below. All right, next story. HDHomeRun Premium TV is shutting down. This is where the Omniverse part comes in. So HDHomeRun Premium TV is a live TV streaming service that is shutting down. Now the HDHomeRun devices will continue to work if you wanted to DVR your antenna or you have a cable card one. That will continue to work, but the live TV streaming service that brings you like ESPN, etc., will cease working at the end of your next billing cycle. And at that point, it won't auto-renew and it will stop working for you. Silicon Dust has not said why. Of course, their upstream partner that provides all this is Omniverse, who is currently facing a lawsuit from ACE, who says they don't have the legal right to do this, and it's being dragged out in court right now. So we wanted to find out what happened. We reached out to Silicon Dust to ask them, hey, why are you shutting down? They never responded to our request at the time of this recording of the video. It's very possible it has nothing to do with ACE. It's possible that Omniverse just got sick of this legal battle. It is just as possible that Omniverse said, or excuse me, that Silicon Dust said, hey, we're not getting the subscribers that we want. This is not a financially smart move for us. Live TV streaming services are very crowded. So they've announced that, hey, we're shutting down. Why? We'll have to wait and see. I'd love to know, though, what you think. Now, this goes back to a prediction I made at the beginning of this year, completely before Omniverse or anything like that. This lawsuit happened. There are so many live TV streaming services that there's more than probably the market can sustain. As best I can tell, there's at least 20 when you take in all these services like Sling and DirecTV Now and Hulu, and then all the Omniverse ones like HDHomeRun Premium TV and more. With so many on the market right now, it's just a game of math. You ever hear the old story, right? There was just more restaurants than that town could support. If you have a town of 1,000 people and there's 100 restaurants, that just probably means not every restaurant's going to make it. I think that's where we are right now. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is what you think. If you had to pick a live TV streaming service that you think won't make it, just not necessarily because they're a bad service, but just because there seems to be more services on the market than the market can sustain at this time, let me know. Now the good thing about this is the free and open market, right? The best services will survive, and the ones who maybe are not the best won't make it. You know, unlike cable TV and satellite, which pretty much has a monopoly, right? There's only 3 or 4 options in your town. You have to pick one of these 3 or 4 options and that's it. Now that they're streaming, there can be 10, 20, 30, 40 options, but that doesn't mean that necessarily there's enough people in the market to support them. So leave me a comment. I'd love to know which ones you think won't make it, purely based on that there's just so much competition and you just don't think there's enough there to make them stand out. I'd love to hear you. That was one of my predictions at the start of this year, and I'm interested to see how that plays out over the course of the next year. So leave us a comment and let us know what you think. All right, next up, the future of cord cutting is something that's been coming up a lot. And one of the things I wrote about this week that I thought was very interesting, I'd love to know your opinion, is the fact that the future of cord cutting seems to be home internet. Of course, for years and years, DSL and cable for most people was it. You had DSL, cable, fiber in a few markets if you're lucky. Well, now we have T-Mobile has launched their LTE service. They're testing out for 5G by launching with 50,000 customers in LTE wireless internet service. They say when 5G comes, it'll be faster and more. It's a $50 a month, no data cap type service. Other players have come into the market, already rolling 5G and other fixed wireless services out with the idea that we can easily wire up a neighborhood without having to dig up the yards. In my neighborhood right now, AT&T is running fiber, and there are a lot of upset people because they're literally digging up every single person's yard, running a wire up to basically close their house. So if they want it, they can dig up even more and put a wire into their home to give them fiber. Well, that's extremely time consuming. It's been happening for months in my neighborhood. It's extremely expensive. Compare this to 5G or fixed wireless, where you put one fiber line into like a telephone pole, you put a box of, you know, a little couple foot long box at the top of the telephone pole, and now the entire neighborhood is wired with 5G or a fixed wireless standard, whatever standard you're using. And so that's bringing competition. That seems to be the next big stage of cord cutting. Once there's competition in home internet, just like we talked about earlier, now there's 10, 20 live TV streaming services. What happens when there's 10 internet services? What happens if you have the question of cable, DSL, T-Mobile, Verizon, Dish, Google, the list goes on and on. I know a lot of people say, well, it's still big companies, but at least you have competition. It's instead of just saying, hey, I have one company or I have 2 companies, now I have 10 companies to pick from, and they have to compete for my business. There's been multiple studies that show that when they have to compete, customer service gets better, prices get more aggressive, services get better. So I'd love to know, how eager are you to cut the cord on home internet? I think this is kind of something that we really need to be paying attention for. I think 2019 may be just the start of the movement forward, kind of like 5 years ago was just the real start of where cord cutting got moving, where we may be at that point with 5G, where 2019 is just kind of that first little roll of the rock down the hill, where it may take a couple years for it to really speed up, where the majority of Americans have the ability to have competition for home internet. But it definitely feels like that's where we're going right now, and I'm interested to know your opinions. All right, next up, PBS is in talks with pretty much every live TV streaming service. They're very clear that they intend to be on multiple live TV streaming services by the end of the year. I wanted to once again in our weekly, I know I talked about this in the weekly recap, but in the daily recap, but in the weekly recap, talk about the fact of why PBS even needs to negotiate. A lot of people brought up the idea, well, PBS is a publicly funded service. Shouldn't they just be free to PlayStation View, Hulu, Sling, and more? Well, the reality is a majority of PBS's funding does not come from the federal government. It actually comes from deals with companies like Comcast and Spectrum and Dish and DirecTV and more. And actually the biggest source is memberships from people like you. So they need to negotiate just like other companies do, just like Fox or just like CBS. And it's kind of a quasi-public/private organization. The money that comes from government goes into a nonprofit organization. That nonprofit organization disperses that money that Congress has allocated for public broadcast to like PBS. So it's kind of an interesting setup, but less than a third of PBS's funding comes from the federal government. So keep that in mind. A lot of the content you see in PBS is sponsored by people like you, private donations, and from places like contracts to Comcast and more. So if you ever wonder why, that's the big reason. Unlike some governments which 100% fund their public broadcasts, or at least 99% fund it, and then they can really just give it away for free because your taxes are paying for it. Your tax dollars pay a relatively small portion of PBS's overall budget. And that's why they need the contract with PlayStation Vue. They need PlayStation Vue to pay them for the rights to their content, because if they don't, well, then they probably won't be able to continue in business. PBS wouldn't survive if no one was paying them for the right to use their content. So I have a link down below, a very interesting read from the CEO comments and the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, about that. All right, next up, Roku is dominating the world of cord cutting. According to our readers, more than double than the Apple and the Fire TV, and more than the Apple and Fire TV combined use a Roku in the world of cord cutting. Why is this important? Why is Roku's lead so important to cord cutting? Well, we kind of see this week that Apple, as they announced that, hey, we're coming to Roku because we need the ability to reach that market. While Apple TV is not going away, they have kind of come to the realization, I think, that the Apple TV won't dominate the living room in the same way that iPhone has dominated market. Yes, Android overall is much bigger than iPhones in market share worldwide, but Apple has a huge market right here of customers people want. They haven't quite achieved that dominance in TV, and the Fire TV and Roku has been quite a bit ahead of them for some time now. So the ability to say, hey, we're Roku, we own a vast majority of cord cutting, we own a vast majority of streaming in your living room overall, that allows them to come and say, hey, Apple, you really need to be on our service and bring your stuff to us. Amazon, you need to be on our device. Netflix, Hulu, and more all need to be on Roku. They all need to be on the Fire TV if they want to reach the vast majority of Americans, and more importantly, the vast majority of cord cutters. This allows them to dictate to a point what the future of cord cutting is. You see this a little bit with Amazon kicking out the HDHomeRun app and others that used Omniverse, and it probably put a big ding in that. You know, when they can be the gateway to your living room, it gives them a huge amount of control. Now, the danger here is you don't want one company dominating it. It's very good for cord cutting to have Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, Android TV, so that you do have the ability to say, hey, I don't like what Roku's doing. I don't like what Amazon's doing. I don't like the Apple TV. That you have the ability to go into other places, because pretty much everybody's on everything now because of the fact that there is no one device that dominates it so much that they have a 90-some% market share. So that's very interesting. My question to you is, which device do you use? Do you use a Roku? Do you use a Fire TV? Do you use Apple TV, Android TV? Why do you use that device? What do you like about it? Are you at all concerned about Roku getting too big of a market share? Or are you happy that Roku is the leader right now versus an Apple or an Amazon? Leave me a comment. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. But check out that survey that we were talking about here. Over 3,000 cord cutters posted about or answered our survey, and we're slowly posting the results right now. All right, last story of the day. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, which right now has the regulatory authority over the internet. When the FCC ended the so-called net neutrality, they transferred the regulatory authority, oversimplification, but very simple explanation here. Regulatory authority of the internet transferred from the FCC to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Well, the FTC has come out and demanded 7 companies, including AT&T, Comcast, Google, and Verizon, supply them with a bunch of information related to the privacy policy. How are you being notified about your privacy rights as an internet provider? How is your information being used for advertising and other things from their internet provider. Because let's be honest, Comcast, Spectrum, all these companies see everything you do. If you use a VPN, well, that VPN provider sees everything you do. How much do you trust that VPN? How much do you trust Comcast or Spectrum? The FTC seems to be cracking down on this. They want to know how your protection is being, your privacy is being protected. Hopefully this comes out to some future maybe privacy rules that help protect you from internet service providers using their huge power to dictate what you do. So leave us a comment. Let me know what you think of this. Are you excited the FTC is doing this? Are you concerned about your internet privacy? Are you concerned with how your data is being used for advertising and more? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. All right, everybody, I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope everything is going well for you. We'll be back next Monday with our daily recaps and next week with our weekly recaps about everything happening in the world of cord cutting. Really appreciate your support. We're going to continue to do our best to be as accurate as possible with the information we have. And we appreciate your support to make this happen as we approach 60,000 subscribers. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your support.